Hey everyone. In this video, I would like to make some observations about the beginning of Beowulf, particularly some things that might be confusing or easily overlooked. Because at the beginning, we get essentially a genealogy, a family history, but not the family history we are expecting. You can find on the internet all sorts of family trees for Beowulf genealogy charts. This one comes from Mr. Miranda's class. Thank you, Mr. Miranda, whoever you are. What I want to point out here is that we have the genealogy, the family history of Beowulf, all right, who is actually part Geat, part Wendel, though he is associated with the Geats. Also, we have the family history of the Danes and Hrothgar, the one who Beowulf eventually goes to help. And it's Hrothgar's family tree that we get at the beginning, not Beowulf's, even though we're probably expecting Beowulf's. And it's even confusing because one person in that family history's name is Beow. So we actually expect Beowulf to be coming. But this is Hrothgar's family history. Shield, sometimes spelled with a CY, this would be the Old English spelling. Shield is Hrothgar's great grandfather. Beow, his grandfather, and Halfdane, his father. And what's interesting about this family history, because it might otherwise strike you as irrelevant, or maybe not irrelevant, but not necessary. What is interesting is that it sets up the politics of the time and gives us some insight into the value system in which these characters exist and the values by which they live. And so a lot of that is tied in with the politics. And what the epic tells us about what it means to be a good or effective leader and ruler. So starting with Shield, the great grandfather of Hrothgar. Shield, and I'm quoting, "There was Shield chieftain, scourge of many tribes, a wrecker of mead benches, rampaging among foes. This terror of the hall troops had come far. A foundling to start with, he would flourish later on as his powers waxed and his worth was proved. In the end, each clan on the outlying coasts beyond the Whale Road had to yield to him and begin to pay tribute. That was one good king." So in this quotation, we get the impression that Shield's road to power is through brute force, through wrecking mead benches, rampaging, terrorizing, and that even though he started out not so impressive, he eventually, as his powers grew, he proved his worth and became so forceful that eventually everyone fell in line. And the epic tells us that was one good king, the king that everyone feared, the king that gained his rule through power and terror. But his son gives a different model for what it means to be a good king. His son, again, is Beow, the one whose name is very close to Beowulf. And here I quote, "Beow's name was known through the north, and a young prince must be prudent like that, giving freely while his father lives, so that afterwards, in age, when fighting starts, steadfast companions will stand by him and hold the line. Behavior that's admired is the path to power among people everywhere. What makes this quotation interesting is that it gives a very different model of leadership than the one we just got from Shield. What made Shield a good king was the fact that he was powerful and that people were afraid of him. But Beowulf's path to power is different. And now Beowulf is, I'm sorry, Beow. See, even I get the names mixed up. So Beow's path to power is different. Now Beow is able to become a king because he is the son of a king. So part of that path to power is already handed down to him. It's part of the genealogy. Okay. But it also has to be earned. Okay? It's not just assumed that he will be able to rule and be a successful ruler. Okay, that there will be threats from inside and outside the tribe to his power. And not everybody can be as tough and as overpowering as Shield. So Beow takes a different path. His path is to be prudent, to be wise. Again, I quote, giving freely while his father lives, so that afterwards in age, when fighting starts, steadfast companions will stand by him and hold the line. Behavior that's admired is the path to power among people everywhere. So his approach is to gain trust and loyalty among the people, not to terrorize them, right? He earns, it says he gives freely while his father lives. So while his father was in power and he had that cover, he was good to people. Okay? He behaved admirably. He earned their respect and their loyalty and their trust. Now, what seems to be a contradiction, because we just heard that Shield was a good king for terrorizing everybody, whereas here it says that behavior that's admired, not feared, is the path to power among people everywhere. I think it's a recognition that, again, not everyone can be Shield. And not everyone can be so overbearingly terrifying that they ultimately command respect. But Beowulf's path of behaving honorably and by building loyalty and trust, by gathering people around him who will help him fight, Beowulf's path is much easier to replicate. It's much easier to be a Beow than to be a Shield. One question I want you to think about as you're reading and analyzing Beowulf is, which path does he seem to be following? Is he more of a Shield or is he more of a Beow? Is he someone who is more inclined to go it alone, more inclined to use his brute force to get what he wants? Or is he someone who succeeds by building loyalty and by enlisting those around him and using that loyalty to help him get what he wants? And it's a little more complicated than you might think, this question about Beowulf. So moving forward, Shield dies. His remains are covered with his treasures and sent out into the sea as a memorial to him. It's always interesting how the epic always throws reality at us. So we get this long description of the treasure and the memorial boat, and then it ends, after they send him off to sea, bewailing him and mourning their loss, it ends, no man can tell, no wise man in hall or weathered veteran knows for certain who salvaged that load. So in other words, we know that somebody stole the treasure, okay? That whatever respect and dignity was shown to Shield during his life and at his death, it only goes to the coastline, if even that far. So anyway, jumping ahead a little bit from Beowulf, we don't get much about Halfdane, and then we get to Hrothgar. Hrothgar is the king in the time frame of the story of Beowulf, at least this first part of Beowulf. What we find out about Hrothgar is that the fortunes of war favored Hrothgar. Friends and kinsmen flocked to his ranks, young followers, a force that grew to be a mighty army. So Hrothgar seems to also be someone who has gained loyalty and gained support among his people. And to show that loyalty and that support, he built his great mead hall. And I quote, "So his mind turned to hall building. He handed down orders for men to work on a great mead hall, meant to be a wonder of the world forever. It would be his throne room, and there he would dispense his God-given goods to young and old, but not the common land or people's lives." And what's interesting here is that this mead hall, and essentially a mead hall is a place of gathering, and you can find some photos on the internet. It's described in very extravagant terms in Beowulf. This gives you an idea of what a mead hall might look like as a visual. It's described very extravagantly, and there are some extravagant pictures. It probably in reality looks something like this. Okay, but it's a gathering place for his people, particularly his most loyal and devoted people and warriors. And again, this is a place where he would dispense his God-given goods to young and old. This is a place where essentially he would pay back the people for their loyalty and their trust in him and their obedience to him. But he would also respect the limits on his power, or at least the political expectations of the people, right? So he would not dispense of the common land or people's lives. So he also recognizes that that giving away land that belongs to other people, he recognizes that using the mead hall as a place to show his brute force, as a place to conduct executions or exact revenge, is the opposite of what he wants to accomplish with this place. He wants this place to be something that is unifying, of course, unifying in the service of being honorable to him and his power. Okay, but this is how he has chosen to rule. He has chosen to rule by gaining loyalty, by gaining trust and rewarding it. And that is one reason why Grendel's attack on the mead hall is so upsetting to Hrothgar, is that it's upsetting what he's trying to do for his people. And it's also upsetting his attempts to gain and maintain his power among his people. It's preventing him from rewarding the people in the way that he would like in order to preserve that power. And again, as you're reading through Beowulf, think about the, how this plays out with regards to Beowulf himself, and the way that Beowulf attempts to earn the respect of others, and what he does with that respect. And also the image we get of Hrothgar, particularly in those celebrations, and the things that Hrothgar has to say, and also what Hrothgar's queen, Wealhtheow, has to say too. We get a lot of interesting glimpses into the politics of the Danish people at the time of the epic. So that is it for this video. Thank you for watching and listening, and have a great day.